Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Planning Committee being held at 6 p.m. on the 17th of August. Right off the bat, sorry, just a quick 5-minute delay, just waiting for Mr Bradbury to come down so we can proceed with the meeting. It'll be around about 5 minutes. Thank you. Recess there. Welcome to the Planning Committee being held at 6 p.m. on the 17th of August 2023. Obviously I'd like to welcome Mark Bradley as a new Director of Place with us this evening, and with that we'll open up the agenda. I do apologise for this because I know quite a few members are here this evening to hear both of these items, but I've just been advised that a legal procedure has come up today, and I've been advised by the legal team, Caroline, and Director of Place, Mark Bradbury, in agreement with the Vice Chair to defer item 9. Land adjacent Wattswood Mardyke Farm, found on pages 69 to 164. I do apologise, obviously this would be the second deferral, but more information will be available from yourself, Mark, in the coming days if there's any further queries. That does mean we've got quite a light agenda here this evening, so with that we'll move on to apologies for absence. Kenna, do we have apologies for absence? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Arnold and Councillor Piccolo, and Councillor Castro is here this evening substituting for Councillor Piccolo.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, and with that we'll go to approve the minutes as a correct record on the committee held on the 13th of July 2023. I've just got one query. It was in relation to page 7. And it says that if you look at the bottom there, when you look at the votes, 4 votes in favour, when in fact it was only 3, and 0 councillors voted against, when in fact it was 3 councillors that voted against. And that was in relation to Thurrock Football Club on the second vote. Okay, Kenna, you happy with that typo, yeah? Brilliant, excellent. All right, thank you, everyone. Any further comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay. All right then, items of urgent business, other than obviously that brief deferral, I've not agreed to any items of urgent business. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? No, okay, no. Yeah, so moving on to declaration of correspondence, we have, I've had an email from Andrew Riley in relation to Tamarisk Road. That was sent to me, but I assume that was sent out to all members. And then I also had an email from MD Starr in relation to Mardyke Park, which has obviously been deferred, and I think that went out to everyone. Is that agreed? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I also had a communication from Kathy Sisterton about in objection to Mardyke Park as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. All right then. So with that, we'll go on to planning appeals, found on pages 11 to 20. Are there any questions there on relation to some of the appeals that we've had come through recently? The only one I did notice was obviously a red paper that we had recently where we where we voted against an item, and then we decided to follow the legal advice we received, and the inspector has agreed with us that it was the correct decision. So thank you to everyone who was involved in that part of the process. And then with that, any further questions? No? Okay, so then we've got a public address to the Planning Committee, and obviously that allows us to discuss the remaining item on the agenda here this evening. That's a land adjoining Tamarisk Road, South Ockenden, found on pages 21 to 68. This is obviously a deferred item from last month. Lucy, would you be so kind as to present your findings? Obviously we rejected this. You've taken it away, you've come back, and let us know.
Yeah. I just noticed as our planning officer's left, he's just been accosted by the member of the public and taken off to another room. I just want to make sure he's okay.
Cool. Right.
Interesting evening, everybody.
Thank you, Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. So, yeah, as the Chair said, this application was deferred from the last committee in July. So I'll just whiz through the presentation again. Okay. Right, so this is the site location plan. It's a triangular shaped parcel of land which is 0.5 of a hectare in size, which is located directly to the south of Ockenden Station, between the railway line and Tamarisk Road in South Ockenden. The site is presently an area of mainly flat scrubland, formerly used as railway sidings. The land to the east, south and southwest of the site is a residential area of South Ockenden. To the northwest of the site, across the railway line, is the next distribution centre. Site is within Flood Zone 1 and has no land use designation within the core strategy. So this is an aerial photograph and the site is situated centrally. This is a proposed block plan, so it shows the footprints of the five buildings for the flats. So there's 3 blocks facing onto Tamarisk Road and 2 blocks which are adjacent to the railway line. So proposal would redevelop a previously developed site to provide 38 new homes. There's a shortfall within the council's 5-year housing supply and national planning policy presumption in favour of residential development at such sites. This is a proposed site layout which shows the new vehicular access here and the layout with the 32 parking spaces and area of open space to the south of the site. These are proposed elevations, so the top are the blocks which face onto the railway line, and the bottom elevations are those which face onto Tamarisk Road. This is a visualisation of the Tamarisk Road facing blocks with the railway line blocks viewable in the background. This is a visualisation of Muse Street, and this is if you are facing south. So there's a couple of photos. This is the site viewed from Larkspur Close, facing northwest, and the site viewed facing south from just by Rosemary Close. So the application was accompanied by a viability statement, which has been considered by an external viability consultant who was appointed by Thurrock Council, paid applicant. So no affordable housing is being put forward, but the independent assessments confirm that the development is not commercially viable, and policy STP2 confirms the council recognises the majority of Thurrock's identified housing land supply is on previously developed land, often subject to a variety of physical constraints. The capacity of a site to deliver a level of affordable housing that can be supportive financially will be determined by an individual site open book economic viability analysis where deemed appropriate. The viability conclusions were that the development could not support any Section 106 contributions. Nonetheless, in this case, the applicant has agreed to the following contributions. So a total, so education, healthcare, and a transport contribution. So the total contribution is just under £92,500. Oh, wrong way. Okay, to summarise, the proposal would redevelop a previously developed site to provide new homes. National planning policies require a presumption in favour of housing development where a 5-year housing supply is not evidenced. This meets policies in terms of design and layout, there would be no unacceptable impacts to neighbouring properties. With mitigation, there would be no unacceptable impact in terms of highways. And the proposal would comply with all relevant adopted core strategy policies and is recommended to members favourably. At the last committee, members were minded to refuse the application. The matters raised at that meeting have been assessed within the update report, and the conclusion is still that the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lucy, for that detailed report there. So that opens it up to further questions. Do you have any further questions? Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Lucy. Can you just, 2 questions really. What is the difference between the application and this application? Like, because we asked for, the biggest problem we've got is parking on this. And you've just put a slide up about mitigations in terms of the highway. Can you just tell us what mitigations are being prepared to be put in place? I am very mindful as well that if there is a CPZ, that doesn't control over this development anyway. So we've still got the issue with you've got 32 units with potentially 64 cars, because normally people have two cars apiece now, or we can just say 32 cars itself. So if you could answer some of that, it'd be really good. Thanks.
In terms, thank you, Councillor Watson. In terms of the first point you raised, this is exactly the same application as was put forward in July. So there's been no changes. The purpose of it being deferred and coming back was an update report to try and answer the main concerns which were raised at July. And for highways, there's, as you say, there's 32 parking spaces, 38 units, and as mitigation, the applicant has put forward a £40,000 contribution towards a car club space, which is a new initiative which new highways policies have put forward in 2021. So this is like a car club, like I suppose you may have seen more in kind of London, in denser urban areas. So it's a scheme that people sign up to and can use a kind of a pool car when they need for a small charge. Is that any good? Oh, Julian wants to.
I'll just sort of add that if you look at the current census for 2021, the average ownership of a car for a dwelling, particularly flats, is not 2. It's in the main 1. I think it's somewhat of a misnomer that everybody has 2 cars who owns a flat or a house or whatever it is. That's not necessarily the case. I can say from my own personal point of view, we own 1 car between my wife and myself. So if you look at the census for 2021, it quite clearly doesn't follow the fact that everybody that has a property has two cars. That's not what the current census is saying. And that's not dissimilar to what the 2011 census was. It's not a significant increase from 2011.
Totally agree, Julian, but most people who have 3 or 4 bed houses tend to have like 3 or 4 cars where I live. So I think that's ever here or there. And being on top of a station does not mean you don't own a car, because you're going to use public transport all the time. So it's a bit of give and take. So the question I want to ask is, did you do any feasibility study around the Flowers Estate itself on the amount of cars that's already there? And could the road, the Tamarisk Road, actually cope with the additional car park that will be spilled out from this development?
No, we didn't do we didn't do a parking study of the Flowers Estate. Obviously, if we thought it was an issue, we would have asked the developer to actually do that. In terms of from now that the parking charges and the residents' parking has been further added to Tamarisk Road, because it was only on one side originally, and now it's been moved on to the other side, we'd have to review that to see what the current level of parking is. But the parking has all changed since the application was first put in, because originally when the application was first put in, there was no parking restrictions on the side of the application at all. It was a free-for-all, anybody could park there. So no, we haven't since, because obviously the council has brought in further restrictions on Tamarisk Road. So I can't definitely say vehicles would not migrate onto Tamarisk Road, but ultimately, you know, we brought in a car club. Yes, it's a lesser standard, but from our point of view, we consider that that's appropriate, and we need to go down the road of actually trying to encourage people to use other forms of transport, and it's right on the station. In terms, if you look at some other developments that are coming in, particularly in Grays Town Centre, they're looking for net zero parking.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Polly, then Councillor Shinnick. Thank you.
Yes, thank you on that. I've got 3 questions maybe. Julian, going back to the car club, have we got any examples of any successful car clubs actually in our borough, actually in Thurrock?
Thank you, Chair. And not in Thurrock, no. I mean, if you look, I worked in the city of Westminster before coming here to Thurrock, and the car club has been wholly successful. It's been so successful that originally it was being run by Westminster themselves, and a company's come along and taken it over because it's so viable. Ultimately, everything's got to start from something small and work its way up. If we don't actually start with something to begin with, then, you know, we're never going to encourage people to use other forms of transport, or you know, encourage, you know, car share or whatever it is. I think we need, you know, other authorities have shown us the way, and we need to start following that way.
And also, and still do have a lot of concerns over the design and the quality of the build. So do we know if this scheme has been through a design review panel?
Thank you, Councillor Polly. It hasn't been through a design review panel, but there was 2 pre-app exercises with this proposal, and it's been in liaison with our urban design officer now team, and they have worked with the applicant to move this forward, because originally when they first came in with the pre-app, I think it was way more than 38 units. I think it was nearer 60. So they have worked with the urban design team, and they are satisfied with the proposal. I think it's important to note too, I mean, obviously design is subjective, but this is a bespoke design, so a lot of kind of house builders will come in to the council with standard house types and standard flat types. So this proposal has been put forward as a kind of bespoke, specific to this site.
Can we just cover the 106, because on the first time of hearing this, there was no capacity for social affordable housing within the scheme, and the 106 contributions were. We've now got 2,500 per unit. Is that right on the 106? Okay, could you advise me on the 106 then?
Yep. If we can, Kenna, is it right to go back to the... So there's no affordable housing contributions. I don't know if I said something to be misleading. Apologies. So the viability exercises that have been gone through have basically said that there's no kind of profit or additional profit in the application. So affordable housing or Section 106 contributions aren't viable. But nonetheless, the applicant has agreed to the following contributions. So that's the full education contribution that education requested, and the same with the healthcare contribution, which has increased from, it was 15,000 at the last committee meeting, but we revisited that with the NHS. And the transport contribution for the car club, which is a flat £40,000 rate. So total contribution is 92,500, near enough.
If I may, Chair, just to reiterate further, the only difference from when the committee was when the application was brought to committee in July to now is that the NHS healthcare contribution has been updated given the period of time from when it was previously, they were previously consulted on it. Originally it was 15,000. Given the year or so since it was last updated with the NHS, they've now confirmed that it's 19,6 is owable from the scheme in terms of its scale and so on. But in all other respects, the contributions are the same as what members considered at the July committee. And there's been no change at all in terms of the scope or viability for affordable housing.
Sorry, there might be some terminology there, but that's what I'd worked out, that at 92,500, it's roughly 2,500 contributions per dwelling. So that you know, which is yeah, I find staggeringly low. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Shinnick.
Wrong one. Is there any electric car charging points going in?
There should be. The current standard is if there's 50 car parking spaces, you know, it's a flatted development, it's 2% of those need to be electric charged. Anything less than at least one car parking space needs to be an electric vehicle parking space, and the remainder need to be set up for EV charging in the future.
So when will you actually know that they're definitely going to put that in? You know,
That will be as a condition as part of the so when the condition is signed off, we would need to see proof that the electric vehicle charging point has been put in.
Sorry, I'll just interject there, Councillor Shinnick. Nowadays, the provision of electric vehicle points and charging capability is included within building regs. So we don't need to condition it within planning because that's like doubling up.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions there? No? Okay, all right then. I think we've obviously covered everything. So what we'll be looking at now, obviously, we're going to the debate phase. This was rejected last month. I think it was 5 votes against, 3 in favour. One of those members is not there. So really I'm after, has anyone's opinions changed before we go any further? So where are we with this? Are we, Councillor Polly?
My views as previously, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further opinions there? Has anyone's changed? Councillor Watson?
My opinion hasn't changed on this at all, to be honest with you. And I will say something on this, unfortunately, but we have got an affordable housing policy for that reason, for the affordability for hopefully what is affordable, but for our residents in our borough. A bit of scrubland, as it may be, but Ockenden is very well built up right now, and I just think that the contribution does not weigh that the fact this is a full private for sale, 100% as a, you know, to go to anybody. I think that developers should realise that we have got a policy for affordability, and we need to start ensuring that happens within all our schemes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments there? Councillor Lydiard?
I think this one is a marginal one. If they have come down from 60 units to 42, that's a good start. Not happy with it necessarily, but if it goes to appeal, I think we'll probably lose because it meets all the standards that are required. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, obviously it's very similar thinking. I think sometimes you can vote in favour of applications you don't like because ultimately you are worried at that appeal stage, and sometimes you sometimes sort of reject applications you like on that same basis as well. So I'm probably of the same opinion of yourself. I don't like it, but yeah, we need to be aware of that. Any further comments? Let's go to Councillor Maney, then Steve Taylor, cooperative member.
I just echo really what Councillor Watson said. I'm concerned there's no feasibility study being done. I do think that would be useful. And I can't move away from the design. I take on board what you said, Lucy, you know, that they're bespoke, but I just don't like it. I'm really sorry.
No, I'll carry on. Steve Taylor, then Councillor Carter.
Thanks, Chair. I guess just as an observation, and having used the nearby station, which this was the sidings for a good many years when I was at work, I appreciate the concept of a car club, but this isn't Westminster. We don't have the infrastructure that you would have in Westminster. We don't have the underground. We don't have the bus service. We don't have a lot of things that you would have in Westminster. So a car club, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but when you look at the environment where people are going to live, they're not going to have too many alternatives, because unless they use the station, the bus services are not brilliant along there. And more importantly, the number of people that use that station and have used Tamarisk Road for years for parking are still going to want to get to London and get back from London. So much as I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate it fits within the criteria that are put forward currently for parking, for development, I still see it frankly, as an issue. And I'm not saying a car club's a bad idea, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that is particularly appropriate in Thurrock. And when you look one side of that station, you're going out into Greenbelt. And there's, as far as I'm aware, one bus which goes to Romford and to Grays in the opposite direction. But if you're going out into the Greenbelt, I think there's one bus. So I take your point, and I fully appreciate that, but I still think there is an issue around that. And I've said this before over the last 2 or 3 years, maybe our standards for parking should be looked at, because although we've got them and this fits within that criteria, that doesn't necessarily mean that the standard is right. And if you look at some of the chaos you have around some of the newer developments that have gone on in Thurrock over the last 5 years, and the situation you have with places where you cannot get through, certainly an emergency vehicle couldn't get through, it just kind of highlights the point to me. So much as I accept it's perfectly adequate, I still think it's something that maybe we should be looking at as a council more broadly and thinking about is that standard really appropriate. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. What I'll do, I'll carry on, and then we can come back towards the end. Councillor Carter.
Just want to echo the views of yourself, Chair, and Councillor Lydiard here. I'm very certain we're going to lose this on appeal. It completely meets every standard that it needs to, and I think it does actually provide homes, and we are in dire need of homes. in Thurrock. So.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you. I think sometimes you take a risk about being on appeal or not. And I honestly believe that we can't just keep going, oh, we're frightened this is going to go to appeal. If it goes to appeal, it goes to appeal. If we lose, we lose. But the reality is none of these houses will probably end up, well, they're not affordable, for one, and there's a high percentage of, there will be 2 cars for every house, so that means the Flowers estate will then suffer. And with all the best will in the world, Ockendon's there and I do use it, but the majority of people actually go into Upminster because it's cheaper to get the train from there. So losing on appeal doesn't bother me. Going to appeal doesn't bother me, Chair. It's what's right and it's how we think. And if we've always got that cloud about, oh, it's going to go to appeal, then we're never going to be truthful to planning. And believe you me, I'd rather take it on than not, as long as my integrity and our integrity is intact. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that's everyone. Councillor Shinnick, did you want to say anything there?
I just back Councillor Watson, only being a councillor over Chafford 100, we should learn lessons that there's not enough parking spaces and we're going down the line and putting this through with not enough parking and you're going to cause one big chaos.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and then Councillor Polly, before we sum up.
Thank you, Chair. As we have identified that there is, since the first application came in, there are parking charges, there's parking permits because of the parking issues that are there on the Flowers estate. That we've also at last full council received a very eloquent petition from the residents of the Flower estates over traffic and speeding. I really, you say design is submissive. I really do feel that this is a low, like a single-storey station with like a wide turning circle as you approach it. There's openness there. The housing on the other side of the road are just normal one up and down houses. They're 2-storey. There's nothing to refer it to a housing estate that is the other side of the railway lines in Arrowsdale Avenue. I think conceptually has no bearing because the impact would be right there on the entrance to the station. Also, if there are electric charging points, how do you stop station users using the electric charging points? How do you stop the people that drive to the station that are maybe going to try and avoid the parking charges, then parking on the development? I think we're creating a problem rather than solving a problem. I also, you know, it's bespoke. Where was the community engagement? Where was the consultation with the local residents? Why didn't they have an input or a say in what is going to be built and impact on them? So for those reasons and others, I still stand by my original decision and I'm against this planning application. Thank you.
Okay then, thank you. Well, obviously we've heard from everyone there. There is a recommendation for approval. Having said that, only 3 members indicated that they were in favour of this. 4 members indicated that they wanted to stick with their original decision. So with that, I believe we'd need to put forward an alternative recommendation, which is one of refusal. First of all, would anyone like to recommend refusal? Councillor Polly, is that seconded by Councillor Watson? Mr Bradbury, I'll bring you in there, and if you could just give us a brief description on what you're looking for in terms of details. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on this occasion, as this has already been brought back, we need to agree the reasons for refusal tonight and not come back and discuss those in a future meeting. So it's important that those reasons are credible clearly the officer recommendation has been to approve, but when we discuss reasons, do bear in mind that we will have to defend those reasons should there be an appeal, and therefore we have to be clear about what those are and why we are refusing for those grounds. As has been discussed in the general discussion, that those reasons do not need to counter the reasons for approval, but they do need to be ones that we can set out clearly and then think about how we might defend them if required to do so.
Okay then, thank you for that, Mr. Bradbury. So, Councillor Polly, I'll bring you in there. Which officer, sorry? Nadia, thank you.
If I may, Chair, thank you. Just for members' benefit, when they're thinking of the reasons for refusal, you know, with having come to the last committee and been here in the July, I hear and understand the members' concerns about this proposal. It's clear that this is the way you actually want to, in all likelihood, to go down the road in terms of the vote, and I understand that completely. I'd just like to remind and advise members with respect to the concerns raised, all of which I completely understand and hear, is that the 4 reasons that were raised at the previous meeting, as members are aware, 3 of those are technical ones that we've highlighted in the report may not be easily defendable at appeal. And I mentioned that at the last meeting with respect to the concerns about viability and affordable housing. I know the specific reference was made initially to the NHS contribution level and amount, I understand that, but there has been concern about the lack of affordable housing raised by members tonight as well as last month. For clarity, the application has been assessed independently in terms of its viability assessment. An appraisal has been carried out twice, and each time it's been found to be non-viable in terms of providing affordable housing, and I think that might be of benefit to Councillor Maney. I know you asked about whether there had been any viability carried out, and it has been carried out twice now, and the scheme isn't viable for affordable housing. And members may also remember that the nearby Arrowsdale development that members refused due to a lack of affordable housing and parking was considered to be something that would be very difficult to defend at appeal due to potential cost implications. And as I say, I referenced that in July, so I would caution members against recommending this application to be refused on viability grounds for that reason, which is a serious risk, I think, at appeal, because I do find it would be very difficult to defend that. With respect to parking, every site is different, as you know, and I think it's fair to say that with respect to what Councillor Polly said, things have changed with respect to the parking permits and the parking controls in the area. And I hear what you're saying there. I still think, given our parking standards that are adopted, it may be very difficult to defend a parking reason for refusal. I don't think there's any merit at all in the noise reasons and the noise concerns raised by members previously, and that is explained in the report as well, purely because the scheme does meet those minimum standards required in terms of noise and insulation, and environmental health officers have no concern about that. Notwithstanding the fact that there are standards that can be gone above and beyond that, if it meets the minimum standard, it would be very difficult to have an objection that could be sustained technically against that. But I think there is something to be said about design and about character impact. I hope you can see that reflected in the report with regards to the comments and an assessment regarding the Flowers estate. I think if members are to look to refuse it, I would recommend that would be the reason for refusal that is considered most seriously, and that it should be, in my view, a reason for refusal that addresses both design and character impact. I think that would be the strongest worded single reason for refusal if the applicant was to go to appeal on this. That could be the strong. I have somewhat. I was half anticipating this. I've drafted a suggested wording. I'm happy to read that out if members would like that now. If not, you can debate
thank
it
you.
further. It's obviously your decision. What I've drafted is the proposed development would, by virtue of the siting, mass, appearance, detailed design and choice of materials, be likely to result in an incongruous development which would appear out of character with the appearance of the residential development in Tamarisk Road and be likely to be harmful to the character of the area and appearance of the street scene. The proposals are considered contrary to policies CSTP 22, 23 and PMD2 of the adopted local development framework and core strategy and policies for the management of development as amended, and paragraph 130 of the MPPF, which specifically deals with design. I appreciate that's quite a mouthful, but I can talk about that more if you want, or if you want to ask questions about that. If there's anything I can help with, let me know.
Okay, Councillor Polly, thank you.
I think that's very helpful, Nadia, and I think we're in agreement that we will use that as advice as part of our wording for refusal. Agreed. I will still add that I feel that there is still parking concerns on the road, and I know you say the viability is not. I think we need to make that message clear that I wholeheartedly support what my colleague Councillor Watson said. We do have affordability policies. When forced with the NHS to increase contribution, although it wasn't significant, it was an increase. The developer has been able to accommodate that. As regards to viability, we're looking at an accountant spreadsheet, and I'm not always convinced that the information that is given to us, that would possibly be worst case scenario. I haven't got confidence in that. So low parking and as we say, the character input and the low design standard and the lack of affordability are the reasons I would give for refusal.
I was just going to say, so just so I'm absolutely clear, Councillor Polly, you're suggesting that we could still have a second and a third reason for refusal, the second being due to the lack of parking provision specifically, which would lead to a highway safety concern as a second reason for refusal, notwithstanding my comments earlier about technically that being very difficult to uphold, but that's where we're looking to go. And a third reason for refusal specific to the lack of affordable housing, which is contrary to CSTP 2. Okay. Which would be harmful to future occupiers and contrary to our own policies. Okay. Just so I'm clear on that, and I'm aware you're still discussing and debating it, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that's, I think we pretty much tidied up everything there.
Oh, just before I forget, the parking one would also have reference to policies PMD 8 and PMD 9 with respect to highway safety. I'm happy if the chair agrees to draft that reason regarding parking, certainly if members agree and vote in favour of that, and we can send it to the chair to agree that wording if that would be helpful, or we can agree that now if that's easier.
Yeah, agree it now. I'm happy with that wording. Thank you.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. Members are aware that that may well not be defendable at appeal, those second and third reasons, and given those cost implications to the council. Okay.
Yeah, you're happy with that, yeah. Because okay then, excellent. Mr. Bradbury, you happy with everything? We're going to head to the vote now.
Yeah, I'm I am happy that you proceed to the vote.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Okay, right, so item 8, 21/2190/FUL, land adjoining Tamarisk Road. An alternative recommendation for refusal has been put forward. That was put forward by Councillor Polly, seconded by Councillor Watson. All those in favour of refusal, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. And all those against? Okay, thank you. Thanks. That's conclusive, Kenny. Yeah, 4-3. Brilliant. Okay then. Excellent. All right then. So, item 8, 21/0219/FUL, land adjoining Tamarisk Road, has been refused. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions there. And that brings the meeting to a close at, what time is that? Is that 18:52? Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers. Thank you.